Alright, let's continue with this story of this strange guy. 11. Postcrim. After I looked about with my eyes, the whole town, I returned into the diminutive room, the small room. At last, with good fides, I could exact kisses. I tied up the boy tightly with very tight embraces, and I enjoyed my will as far as it would be envied in its luckiness. He was lucky to have all these complexions. Nec quidem. So, not indeed was everything complete, omnia facta. Everything wasn't done yet or still, when Ascultius, the other guy, furtively, he moved himself to the door, and having shaken the bolts of the door very strongly, he found me, ludentim, with my brother. That's one way of putting it. Idaque, and so, with laughter and applause, a bit of clapping, filled the caluluem, the little room. He vaulted me from my covering of a cloak that was over me, and he said, inquired, what are you agabassing? What are you doing, brother most holy or pure? Well, indeed. Are you making a contuberum? This is like a bedroom mate with clothing. There's a couple of different conjectures here, but anyway, we'll just leave it as it is. Not with neither were these only inside of with words. He continued, so it wasn't only this, but he continued. He took a lorem, which is a thong or a strap, from a pera, which is a bag or something. He solvered, so he loosened this leather thong. So this is why he's not just only with words. He's got some actions now, and he began not perfunctorily or not slightly to verberate me. He began to beat me, and he added even these petulant words. Looks like a question. Thus, you don't want to divide up the spoils with your brother over this bed friend, I suppose. Why aren't you sharing this? Okay, so that's a future imperative. 12. We came into the forum, with the sun now being deficient. It was night time coming on, in which there was a frequent selling of things, we noticed. Not indeed pretty awesome, not expensive, but nevertheless of some things with bad intentions, you might want to say. Something singular as walking, and it covered most easily the obscurity of the time, so it's dusk, so things are getting dark. So I guess for someone walking, it's hard to make out what they were, and someone had bad intentions compared to, let me say up here, good intentions sort of thing. Anyway, therefore, when ourselves, de Tullus, we took away a seized pallium with a bit of banditry, so they shoplifted some cloak, so that this most opportune occasion or time to use, it takes the ablative, we began to concudere. I don't know what that means here. And in a certain corner of the extreme, the sedum's usually the edge or the fringe of something. So it's either the fringe of the garment or the fringe of the forum. Anyway, they concudere, so that if by chance the splendor of the vest, the brightness of it, could lead in a buyer for it, if it was possible. Okay, so it wasn't long of a delay. So I guess here he was shaking the extreme edge of the thing, hoping that the splendor would get a buyer. So he was out in the street shaking it. That's what's going on in a certain corner. Anyway, a certain rusticus, a certain guy from the country who was familiar to my eyes, with a companion who was a mulia coola. Mulia is a woman. A coola is a young woman. He approached with her. You don't include the cummed person as part of the verb, and rather diligently began to consider the pallium, the cloak. In Vichem, in turn, Asclepius injected his contemplation, his gaze over the shoulders of this rustic buyer, and suddenly he contiquated, he became very quiet, ex animatus, paled probably, and ipsi myself, I could not even without any motion conspect the man. I couldn't look at the man without some movement, for he, it seemed to me, the one who had found the tunic in the solitude, wherever the hell that is. It's not a desert, but by itself maybe. Plainly, this was he himself, ipsi. But when Asclepius feared, trusting of his eyes, there was not anything he wanted to do rashly, temere. So prior, just as if he was an emptor, a buyer, he accessed closer, he went up closer, and he detracted the lacinium off the shoulder. So we have this tunic. A lacinia can be an edge. Sometimes it's a group of people. It's used for a few things. Tent flaps and also for clothing. And he attempted it. He tested it with his fingers rather diligently again. I think we've got diligentius, second time used today. Anyway. Okay, so lacinia. Garment, plural, it's a dress. Small group. Edge, fringe, hem of garment. Fringe of protuberous border or flap. Yeah, that's when it's used in tents. Also a strip of rags. Laciniatum, adverb for in small groups. Back to the plot. 13. O mirabilim lusum fortuna. O wonderful game of fortune. Stroke of fortune. For still, or as yet, he had not even, and they quit him, at all. It didn't look like this rusticus, this rural man, hadn't touched the sutures. That's the sewing line on the garment. With his curious hands. The rusticus would have used. But just as if he was a mendicant, as a beggar, he was selling his spoils, even with a bit of arrogance or fastidios. Asclepius, after he saw that was still inviolate, hadn't been touched, the deposit, they'd placed coins inside, and the person was contemptible of the vendor. He saw he was a lowly peasant from the countryside. He seduced me, he led me aside, Paululum, a little bit from the crowd, and he inquired, "Do you know, brother, to have returned to us this treasure over which I was complaining about? This is the tunicula, the little tunic still. It's appeared. It's intact and full of gold. Quid ergo? What then shall we do? Or, by what right can we reclaim nostram ram, our thing, our tunic of gold? Exhilaratus I was, usually sum, but I was exhilarated. Not only because I saw our booty, but even that fortune had done something to me. It had dismissed me out of this foul suspicion that he was the one that had stole the shirt. I denied agendum that it should be done, that's the gerund, by circuitous means, but plainly it should be fought out in a civil court, and that if he didn't want to return the alien thing to its master, the thing of another belonging to another person, it should come to an interdiction of the court. That'll do.